A very good morning, students. Welcome to science session for class 10, and we are dealing with the 8th lesson, that is periodic classification of elements. Now in the last session we have seen the modern periodic table and what is period, what is groups, and we have seen the periodic properties, isn't it, the trends along the period and the group, isn't it, and we also saw the separation of aluminium from its ore, that is extraction of aluminium from its ore, isn't it. Today in this A very good morning, students. Welcome to science session for class 10, and we are dealing with the 8th lesson, that is periodic classification of elements. Now in the last session we have seen the modern periodic table and what is period, what is groups, and we have seen the periodic properties, isn't it, the trends along the period and the group, isn't it, and we also saw the separation of aluminium from its ore, that is extraction of aluminium from its ore, isn't it. Today in this session we are going to see the extraction of copper and extraction of iron, what is amalgam, what is corrosion, and what are its methods of prevention. Let's go into the session, children. Last class we saw the extraction of aluminium, remember, children? So now we are going to see extraction of copper. Now before going into extraction, let's see the ores of copper. Now what are the ores of copper? There are three important ores. These are the major ores of copper. So the first one is the copper pyrite, and the formula is given adjacent to it. The formula is CuFeS2, and this copper pyrite is said to be the chief ore. So this is the chief ore from which the copper is extracted mainly. The next one is the ruby copper, and its formula is Cu2O. The next one is copper glance, it is Cu2S. So these are the important ores. Sometimes it is asked in the objective types of questions. So see to that you learn the formula for these ores. Next we'll see the extraction, and now in the extraction the first method is the concentration. Now when we are dealing with the general methods of the extraction of a metal, we said that the first method is the concentration method, isn't it? Now here the concentration of the ore employed is the Froth flotation process. We have seen the general process of Froth flotation, isn't it? So this copper ore is concentrated using the Froth flotation process. Since it is in sulfide ore, the froth contains the lighter sulfur particles. The next process is the roasting process. Now we have concentrated using the Froth flotation process, isn't it? Now this concentrated ore, when it is heated in excess of air, now what is removed? Now I have given in the list what are the things that is removed. The first, the moisture and volatile impurities. Volatile impurities which can be converted into gas, isn't it? The components that can be converted into gas is the volatile impurities. So these volatile impurities will be removed. So moisture and volatile impurities will be removed. Next, what are the other impurities that is removed? Sulfur, phosphorus, arsenic and antimony. So these are the impurities that is present along with the copper, but our main aim is to extract the copper. So these are removed as oxides when it is heated in excess of air, and this is called as the roasting process. Now our ore, that is the copper pyrite, is CuFeS2, isn't it? So when this is heated or when this is roasted in excess of air, you will get copper sulfide and iron sulfide. So here you have the combination of copper and iron, isn't it? Now this gets separated, and copper sulfide, that is Cu2S, and Fe is formed along with the liberation of sulfur dioxide. So in roasting, the copper ore, that is copper pyrite, is converted into sulfide of copper and sulfide of iron. Now next is the smelting process. After the roasting process we have the smelting process. Now here the roasted ore is mixed with coke and sand, and it is taken in a blast furnace. So all these mixtures are taken in a blast furnace and we get mate. Now what is this mate? What this mate consists of? This mate consists of our copper sulfide and iron sulfide that we got it in the roasted process, isn't it? So this contains the combination of the copper sulfate and ferrous sulfate. So along with the mate, the other impurities are removed as slag. Now these are the terms that we have seen in the general process, isn't it? The general process of extraction of a metal. So you should have been familiar with this slag. So slag is the impurities that is being removed. So in roasting process, the roasted ore is mixed with coke, sand, and it is taken in a blast furnace. We get mate and slag. The mate consists of copper sulfate and ferrous sulfate, that is the iron sulfate. So the other impurities are removed as slag. So after the smelting process, we have a very important process that is called as Bessemerization. Why it is called Bessemerization? Because it is taken in a Bessemer converter. So what is taken in a Bessemer converter? The mate that we have obtained in the smelting process, and it consists of copper sulfate and iron sulfate, isn't it? So this is transferred into a Bessemer converter. Now what happens in the Bessemer converter? Now we have to remove the iron, isn't it? Because our metal of interest is copper and not the iron. So we have to remove the iron. Now how it is removed? Now we have the ferrous sulfate, isn't it? So that is iron sulfate. Now when it is heated in oxygen, this sulfide ore is converted, that is sulfide, ferrous sulfide, iron sulfate is converted into oxide, that is iron oxide, with the liberation of sulfur dioxide. Now this should be removed as slag. So this iron oxide is treated with silicon dioxide, right? Silica. Now what happens? It should combine and form in slag, isn't it? So what is formed? Iron silicate is formed, that is FeSiO3 is formed. Usually this is used as in flux so that it combines with the gangue, that is the impurities, and removed as slag. So here FeSiO3 is removed as slag, and this is nothing but iron silicate. Now we have the copper. So this is the metal of interest, isn't it? Now copper sulfide, when it is heated in oxygen, it is getting converted into the oxide of copper. So here you will get Cu2O with the liberation of sulfur dioxide. Now this again reacts with Cu2S, that is oxide, copper oxide and copper sulfide combines to form the blister copper, where it is reduced to the metal with the liberation of sulfur dioxide. And this metal that we have obtained is called as the blister copper. Now why it is called as blister copper? Now it consists of 98% of copper and 2% of impurity. So it is called as the blister copper. So from copper sulfide we have converted the sulfide into oxide, and from oxide we got the blister copper. Now this has to be purified, isn't it? So that is called as the refining processes. In the sense, we are refining the metal, we are purifying the metal, and purification of the blister process is carried out by the electrolytic refining. Now this electrolytic refining consists of a container in which the anode and the cathode are immersed in the electrolyte. Now what is the anode? Anode is the impure copper metal. So here we take copper metal, one is impure and the other one is pure. So the impure copper metal is the anode, and the pure copper metal is the cathode. Now what is the electrolyte that is taken? Electrolyte is copper sulfide, acidified copper sulfide, that is nothing but copper sulfide mixed with concentrated sulfuric acid. So this is taken as electrolyte. Now what happens when electric current is passed through it? When electric current is passed through it, the metal, copper metal gets deposited in the cathode. Now this is a pure metal, isn't it? So the copper that is present in this impure metal gets deposited on the copper rod. You will get the metals, that is the pure copper metal will get deposited in the cathode, since it is a pure cathode. Now this is how the pure metal is obtained in the cathode. Now what about the impurities? The impurities will settle at the bottom of the tank as anode mud, because this consists of impurities, anode, isn't it? So all those impurities will settle at the bottom of the tank, and the impurities is called as the anode mud. So this is the extraction of copper. Now in the extraction of copper we saw what is concentration of the ore, what is roasting, smelting, the next one is the Bessemerization, and in the Bessemerization you will get the blister copper, and the blister copper is refined using the electrolytic refining, and you will get the pure copper that is deposited at the cathode. deposited at the cathode. The next one is the physical properties. Now copper, you know, it is a reddish brown metal, isn't it? We use copper at home, the copper utensils that you can see at home, isn't it? So this is the reddish brown metal, and it has high luster in the sense shining. Metals usually have the lustrous properties, isn't it? So this has high luster, high density in the sense mass by volume, the weight, you know. The next is the high melting point, and the melting point is 1356 degrees C. This extraction of copper is very, very important. So I have written the reaction and I have shown you. Please do copy this reactions in your classwork. Next we are going to see the chemical properties of copper. We have seen the extraction of copper, physical properties, now the chemical properties. The first property is action of air and moisture. Now always copper reacts with air, moisture in presence of carbon dioxide, right? Now you would have learned about rusting of iron, isn't it? So this is rusting of copper. This reaction is nothing but rusting of copper. So when copper comes in contact with oxygen and, or you can say moist air, right? It's moist air in presence of carbon dioxide, the rusting of copper takes place. Now what will be the color of the rusting of copper? You would have seen the copper vessels, isn't it? It turns green, isn't it? So due to the formation of this compound, which is the basic copper carbonate, which will be the green layer that is formed of the copper metal. So this is CuCO3 and CuOH twice. So this compound is called as the basic copper carbonate. So this is the reaction of the copper with the moist air in presence of carbon dioxide. Next we will see what is the action of heat. Now action of heat. Now there are two reactions. The two reactions gives two different product when the temperature is below 1370 Kelvin and above 1370 Kelvin. Now here copper in presence of oxygen, when the temperature is below 1370 Kelvin, the product that is formed is copper 2 oxide, and this will be CuO, and this will be black in color. Now when the copper is heated in presence of oxygen above 1370 Kelvin, the oxide that is formed is copper 1 oxide, and it will be red in color. So since because the copper has two oxidation state, that is Cu2 plus and Cu plus, you have two different product that is obtained below 1370 Kelvin and above 1370 Kelvin. So now when you, this question is asked often in the question paper, children, and when you write this question, this reaction should be written with a balanced equation, and the formula of the compound should be written below like this, and you have to mention that this copper oxide, that is copper 2 oxide, will be black in color, and this copper 1 oxide will be red in color. Next we'll go to the action of acids. So reaction with dilute sulfuric acid and dilute hydrochloric acid. Now in presence of oxygen, copper reacts with hydrochloric acid and it will form copper chloride plus water. Now this is about the action of dilute hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid. Now what happens with dilute nitric acid? When it is treated with dilute nitric acid, it forms copper nitrate with the liberation of nitric oxide. This is the nitric oxide. So nitric oxide is evolved, liberated when it is treated with dilute nitric acid. When it is treated with dilute sulfuric acid, now what happens? It doesn't show any reaction, isn't it? Now when it is treated with concentrated sulfuric acid, so this will be an concentrated sulfuric acid, right? So when it is treated with concentrated sulfuric acid, it will form copper sulfide with the liberation of sulfur dioxide and water. So with dilute hydrochloric acid and dilute sulfuric acid, there is no reaction. With concentrated sulfuric acid, it forms copper sulfide with the liberation of sulfur dioxide. Next we'll see the action of chlorine on copper. So copper, when reacts with chlorine, it forms copper 2 chloride, and here the oxidation state of copper is 2, so you get copper 2 chloride. Now what is the action of alkali? Alkali means base, isn't it? Base, when reacts with water, it forms alkali, isn't it? So what is the reaction of alkali? Do not react with alkali. It doesn't show any reaction, so there is no reaction of copper with alkali. Next, we'll see the extraction of iron. And now, before we go into the extraction, let's see the important ores of iron. The first ore is the hematite, and the formula is Fe2O3, and this is the chief ore of iron from which the iron is extracted. The next one is the magnetite, and the formula is Fe3O4. Next is the iron pyrite, that is FeS2. So this is the sulfide ore, isn't it? And these two are the oxides, and these are the three important major ores of iron. The first process in the extraction of iron is the concentration of the ore. Always the concentration of the ore is the first process, isn't it? Now, how is the concentration of the iron carried out? It is carried out by gravity separation process. We know that gravity separation process, isn't it? So, in this process, the powdered ore is washed with a steam. The powdered ore is washed with a stream of water. Now, when it is washed with water, the lighter impurities will be washed away with water, and the heavier ore particle. So, the iron is a heavier ore particle, isn't it? So, this settles at the bottom. So, the iron is concentrated using the gravity separation process. The next one is the roasting and calcination process. So here the concentrated ore is heated in limited supply of air. Now when it is heated with limited supply of air, always roasting is heating in presence of air. Now here is the limited supply of air. Now when it is heated in limited supply of air, the moisture, if any, present, sulfur, arsenic and phosphorus that is present in the ore is removed as oxide. The smelting process is carried out in the blast furnace. Now let's see the description of the blast furnace. The blast furnace consists of the cup and the cone arrangement. So this is the cup and the cone arrangement in which the charge is fed into the blast furnace. Now what do you mean by charge? Charge is nothing but a mixture which consists of iron ore, coke and the limestone. So this is fed into the blast furnace and a series of reactions takes place. Now you have three regions, that is the lower region, middle region and the upper region. So the reactions, various reactions that is going to occur in these regions can be discussed later. Now here is the hot air because the reactions is endothermic reaction and exothermic reaction. So the hot air will be released through this one, and here is a pipe for the hot air blast, right? And here is the outlet from which the slag, that is the impurities, the gangue particles, the impurity particles is fused with the flux and it is removed as slag. So all these impurities are removed through this slag outlet. Now the iron, that is the metal of interest of extraction, is collected in this iron outlet. You can see an outlet at the bottom of the furnace, isn't it? So this is where the molten iron, so that is called as the pig iron, is collected from this iron outlet. So this is about the description. There are various regions and the reactions that occurs in the various regions can be seen, right? Now the next is the smelting process. Now we saw the diagram, isn't it? The smelting process, the blast furnace. I've explained the blast furnace using the picture, isn't it? Now we are going to see the process. What is the process? What are the reactions that takes place in the blast furnace? So the smelting process takes place in the blast furnace. Now the charge. What is the charge? Now charge is nothing but the mixture, isn't it? Now what does this charge consist of? The mixture consists of the roasted ore, coke and limestone, and these three materials are taken in the ratio 8:4:1, right? So this mixture is called as charge and it is fed into the blast furnace. Now there are three regions in the blast furnace. Now while explaining the diagram, I said there are three regions in the blast furnace, isn't it? The first region is the lower region, which is called as the combustion zone, right? Now we'll see the reactions that comes under each region. Now this combustion zone, that is the lower region, is always maintained at 1500 degrees C. Now what happens in this zone? Now here the coke that we are adding, that the charge consists of, reacts with oxygen when it is heated to 1500 degrees C in presence of oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide and heat is liberated, plus heat, isn't it? So in the sense heat is liberated. When the heat is liberated, the reaction is called as the exothermic reaction. So this particular reaction is exothermic reaction because heat is liberated. The next is the middle zone. This middle zone is also called as fusion zone, and the temperature that is maintained is 1000 degrees C. Now what happens in this zone? Now the carbon dioxide is heated in presence of the coke to 1000 degrees C, and what will happen? Carbon monoxide is liberated and it absorbs the heat energy. Now we said that the charge consists of the limestone, isn't it? So this is the limestone, that is calcium carbonate. On heating in this fusion zone, it gives carbon dioxide with calcium oxide. Again, the absorption of heat takes place. So these two reactions together is called as the endothermic reaction because the heat is observed in this reaction. Absorption of heat takes place in this reaction. So that's why we write it as minus heat, isn't it? Now there in the combustion zone, we said that it is plus heat energy, right? But here it is minus heat energy because the absorption of heat energy takes place in these two reactions. Now, the impurities, the gangue particles present in the extraction of iron is the calcium oxide, and this gangue should be removed when it is treated with the flux, isn't it? So we said that the general reaction, isn't it? Gangue plus flux will give you the slag, and here this is the gangue, that is the impurities. The flux that is added is the silicon dioxide, that is SiO2. Now these two combined together, you get the slag, which is calcium silicate. The next region is the upper region, which is called as the reduction region, where the reduction takes place. So it is called as the reduction region. And the temperature that is maintained in this region is 400 degrees C. Now what happens? Now what is reduced? Here the iron oxide is reduced to metallic iron in presence of carbon monoxide. So Fe2O3, which is the iron oxide, in presence of carbon monoxide at 400 degrees C, you will get the metal, that is iron, with the liberation of carbon dioxide. The metal that is obtained is called as the pig iron. At the bottom of the furnace, there will be an outlet in which this molten iron can be collected, right? Now this pig iron is remelted. It is again melted. Remelted in the sense it is again melted and cast into molds, and this is called as the cast iron. So the extraction of the iron consists of the smelting process, which is the very important process, and this consists of three regions: the lower region, middle region and the upper regions. The reactions that comes under these regions are very important, and this smelting process alone can be asked in the 7-mark question, children. So see to that you memorize these reactions and write this once in your classwork. Next we'll go to the physical properties of the iron. We know that it is a grayish white color, isn't it, iron? So we are very familiar with this iron, isn't it? So this is the grayish white metal. It is lustrous. It has the shining property. It is highly malleable and ductile. Malleable in the sense it can be beaten into sheets, isn't it? We can make iron sheets, and it can be drawn into thin wires, isn't it? Iron wires. So those properties are called as the malleability and ductility. It can be made into iron sheets, and ductility in the sense it can be made into thin wires. Iron wires are available, isn't it? So this property is called as malleability and ductility. It has high malleability and ductility, and it is magnetized iron. Of course it is magnetized. It gets attracted towards the magnet. So these are the physical properties of iron. Next we are going to see the chemical properties of iron, children. So these chemical properties of iron are very easy. So now first we'll see with the air, especially the oxygen, or you can say particularly with the oxygen. Iron in presence of oxygen gives magnetic oxide. So this is called as magnetic oxide. What is that? Fe3O4, and this oxide will be black in color. The next is moist air. So here it is dry air, isn't it? So this is the product. Now with moist air, in the sense it should be accompanied by the water molecules. Moist in the sense it contains water molecules. So iron in presence of the moist air, this together is called as moist air. So when it reacts with moist air, it forms Fe2O3 with X molecules of this. X is nothing but the X molecules of this X. This X can be any number, right? So X molecules of water, and this is nothing but rusting. You would have seen the rusting of the iron, isn't it? When iron gets rusted, you get an reddish brown powder, isn't it? So this reaction takes place because iron, when it comes in contact with moist air, it gives this product, which is nothing but the rusting of iron. That is corrosion. Corrosion, you know, isn't it? Rusting. So this is the rusting, and this particular reaction is very, very important because the rusting of the iron reaction is asked often in the 2-mark questions. So try to write this in your classwork and try to memorize this reaction. Next, with steam. With steam, in the sense, the iron do not react with hot water or cold water. So when steam is passed over hot iron rod, you will get magnetic oxide, that is Fe3O4, with the liberation of hydrogen. Next is reaction with chlorine. Now when it reacts with chlorine, it forms ferric chloride. Now again, here the oxide iron shows two oxidation state. One is Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus, and here it forms the oxidation state here is Fe3 plus. So you will get the compound, that is FeCl3, which is called as the ferric chloride. Next is the reaction with acids. Now especially we'll see with the dilute acids. So all these acids that I've taken, that is hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid, are the dilute acids. So iron, when reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid, now we also know the general reaction, isn't it? When metal reacts with acid, it forms salt and the liberation of hydrogen will be there. Similarly, iron, when reacts with hydrochloric acid, the salt that is formed is FeCl2 with the liberation of hydrogen. Again, with dilute sulfuric acid, it forms FeSO4 with the liberation of hydrogen. Nitric acid, right? But in cold condition, right? So iron, when reacts with dilute nitric acid in cold condition, it forms the nitrate, ammonium nitrate, and with the water molecule. So this reaction takes place in cold condition. Now with dilute sulfuric acid, it forms FeSO4 with the liberation of hydrogen, isn't it? Now with concentrated sulfuric acid, so iron, when reacts with concentrated sulfuric acid, it forms ferric sulfate. Again, here the oxidation state is 3 plus with the liberation of sulfur dioxide and water. So these two reactions are totally different, isn't it? So this takes place in dilute form, and this is in the concentrated form. Now the next is the reaction of iron with concentrated nitric acid. This reaction is very, very important. This question especially is very, very important. So the iron, when reacts with concentrated nitric acid, it doesn't show any reaction, or you can say it is inert towards the concentrated nitric acid. Becomes passive. Passive in the sense inert. Inert in the sense it do not react. It becomes inactive. Why? Because of the formation of the oxide that is formed at the surface. So at the surface, when the iron comes in contact with concentrated nitric acid, this oxide is formed. Fe2O4 is formed at the surface, which makes this iron inactive or passive, or it loses its ability to react further. Now this question is very, very important. This seems to be very simple, children, but this is very, very important. You have the question like this: name the acid that renders iron passive, or the copper passive, or aluminium passive. So all these questions, the answer for all these questions, here it can be copper, it can be aluminium, or it can be iron. So the answer is the same. So it, whatever be the metal, this concentrated nitric acid makes it passive or inactive or inert, right? And this is one of the question in your book back exercise that comes under HOTS questions, children. So see to that you write this reactions. You can write it in the same way as I wrote on the paper, isn't it? You can see in the screen. So this way also you can write it, or otherwise I'll give you the PDF which consists of a proper sentence. So see to that you particularly concentrate in this reaction. Next we'll move to what are alloys, children. Alloy is a homogeneous mixture of two or more metals. Two or more metals combine to form an alloy. Homogeneous mixture in the sense the composition is uniform throughout the alloys. Now if you see the properties of the alloys, it will be different from that of its composition. Now for example, bronze is a mixture of copper and tin, right? If I take brass, it is a mixture of copper and zinc. So when copper and zinc mix together, combine together, it forms brass. And brass has different properties, and it does not reveals the properties of copper and zinc. So the properties of the alloys will be different from its composition. Now here in the case of brass, the composition is copper and zinc, isn't it? So brass will have different properties than the copper and zinc. Now why is an alloy prepared? Now the alloy is made to make the strength and the utility of the metal increase, or you can say it to enhance the strength and the utility, it is prepared. And moreover, to avoid the corrosion, which is called as the rusting. We said that rusting, isn't it, the corrosion? So to avoid the corrosion, alloys are sometimes prepared. Next we'll see what is amalgam. Amalgam is nothing but an alloy of mercury with the other metal. Now I said that the alloy is a mixture of two or more metals, isn't it? So in which if one of the metal is mercury, then it is called as alloy. Now for example, I can say dental filling, right? So when you have the cavity, so when you go to a dentist, they do the dental filling, isn't it? So it is nothing but the silver till amalgam. So amalgam is an alloy in which one of the metal is mercury. Now we'll see the methods of making alloys, children. Now before we go into the methods of making alloys, let's see the reasoning for alloying. Why is an alloy prepared? Now alloy can be prepared to modify the color and appearance, to give a better color and appearance of the metal. Now to modify the chemical activity. Now for example, I said that the iron or the copper gets rusted when it is exposed to the moisture or carbon dioxide, isn't it? So this leads to the corrosion or eating up of the metals. You say it as rusting or corrosion, right? So to modify the chemical activity, now if you take alloys, so it will be less corroded, or you can say the corrosion will be minimized. So to modify the chemical activity, to lower the melting point of the metal, or to increase the hardness, the strength and the utility of the metal, alloying is made. And to increase the resistivity to electricity, or the hardness of the metal can be increased by alloying. Now let's see the methods of making alloys. There are two methods. One is fusing the metal together. I said that two or more metals are made by melting it. So if you melt, see for example, if you take brass, now how is brass prepared? By melting copper and zinc, isn't it? So first copper and zinc are melted together and fused together so that the alloys will be formed. Or otherwise, the next process is that it is finely powdered, finely divided metals are compressed together so that it forms an alloy. For example, is the wood metal, which is an alloy of lead, tin and bismuth, and even the cadmium powder is fusibly alloyed. So all these metals are finely powdered and they are compressed together to form the alloy. So these are the two methods. One is fusion of the metals by melting it, and the next one is compressing the finely divided powder, so you get an alloy. Now alloys can be considered as solid solution. Now children, we know what a solution is. A solution is one in which the solute and the solvents are added together. Now what is solvent? A solvent is a liquid in which the solute is added, or solvent will be of high concentration, or it will be in higher quantity, and the solute will be in lesser amount in which it is added to the solvent. Now here the solid solution, why we call it as in solid solution? Because both are metals, and the solvent which has high concentration will be the metal which has high concentration will be the solvent, and the solute will be of less concentration. So these are fused together to form the solid solution. Now for example, in case of brass, now what will be the solvent? Copper will be the solvent which will be in high concentration, and the zinc will be in less concentration, that is the solute, and these two are mixed together to form the solid solution. Since both are solids, it is called as solid solution. Now let's see the types of alloy, children. Alloys are classified based on the presence of iron. If the alloy contains iron, then it is called as the ferrous ions. If it does not contain or do not contain any iron, metal, it is called as non-ferrous alloys. Now if iron is the major component, then it is a ferrous alloy. Let's see the examples: stainless steel, nickel steel. So these are the examples of ferrous ions in which the iron metal is the major component. Now non-ferrous alloys can be aluminum alloy or copper alloy, in which the iron do not form the or do not contain any iron, or it is not the major component. Now look into the table, children. I said that the copper alloy and the aluminum alloys are called as non-ferrous, do not contain iron, isn't it? For example, brass, which is nothing but the mixture of copper and zinc. So these are used for the electrical fittings, hardware, decorative purposes, etc. Bronze, we have coins, bells, utensils, etc., which is nothing but the alloy of copper and tin. The next one is the aluminum alloy, in which the aluminum forms a major component, right? And these are used for making pressure cookers, aircrafts, and the scientific instruments that is used mostly consist of the aluminum as the major component. And the next one is the iron alloy. I said ferrous because it contains iron as the major component. For example, stainless steel, nickel steel. These were the examples that we saw, isn't it? So what is the uses of these alloys? It is used for making utensils, cutleries in the sense the spoons and the forks that we use it, isn't it? And automobile parts are mostly consist of the ferrous alloys, cables, aircraft parts, propellants. So all these are the uses of the iron alloys or the ferrous alloys. Next, we'll see what is corrosion. I said that the alloys are prepared to reduce the corrosion, isn't it? Corrosion in the sense the destruction of the metal, the eating up of the metal, or you can say rusting, in which the metals gets destructed, isn't it? So the gradual destruction of the metal either by the chemical process or by the electrochemical process. So this is called as corrosion, right? Now for example, you can see the iron getting rusted. Copper, I said that the green layer will be formed when it get rusted. When you talk about the silver, it forms a black colored layer when it get rusted. So these are nothing but the corrosion. Now first we'll see what is the rusting of iron. Rusting, if I say the word rusting, you can correlate with the iron, isn't it? Iron getting rusted. It in the sense it forms in brown powdery substance, isn't it? So when it gets rusted, so rusting of iron takes place when the metal is exposed to the moist air. So the reaction between oxygen, water and iron leads to rusting. Now rust is chemically called as the hydrated ferric oxide. Why it is hydrated? Because it combines with the moist air. Now you can see the formula on the screen, that is Fe2O3xH2O, because it contains water molecules. So the reaction between the iron, oxygen and the water molecules leads to the rustings, which is called as the hydrated. The rust that is formed, that is the brown powder that is formed, is nothing but the hydrated ferric oxide. Now it will be a reddish brown powder because the ferric oxide is formed at the surface of the material. Now we'll see what are the types of corrosion. Let's go to the types of corrosion. The first type of corrosion that we are going to see is the dry corrosion or the chemical corrosion. Now when I talk about rusting or corrosion, what automatically you think of it? You think of the moist air, isn't it? When the metals comes in contact with the moist air, it gets rusted. No, it's not so. But there are the other factors that leads to corrosion. The first one is the dry corrosion or the chemical corrosion. Now this takes place in the absence of moisture, so it is called as the dry corrosion. So moisture always cannot be the reason for corrosion or rusting. Now since it takes place in the absence of moisture, it is called as dry corrosion, and the corrosion are due to the corrosive liquids or the gases, for example oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur dioxide or hydrogen sulfide. This takes place at very high temperature. Oxygen, major reactive gases which imparts this chemical corrosion or chemical attack. Now the next one is the wet corrosion or the electrochemical corrosion. Wet corrosion, as the name indicates, the presence of moisture leads to corrosion, isn't it? So when the metal comes in contact with the moist air or water or the solution of acids or bases, so it gets corroded. Now we saw two types of corrosion, isn't it? One is the dry corrosion and the other one is the wet corrosion. One takes place in the absence of moisture, that is dry corrosion, and the other takes place in the presence of moisture, that is the wet corrosion. Now how to prepare how to prevent corrosion. So these are the methods that we are going to discuss to prevent the corrosion. Now I said when we are talking about alloys, we said that the alloying is done to prevent the process of corrosion or rusting, isn't it? So the first method for preventing corrosion is the alloying. The metals can be alloyed, can be fused together to prevent the corrosion. For example, stainless steel. So stainless steel is less corrodable when compared to the constituent metals. The next one is the surface coating the surface of the metal. For example, when you take about the iron metals, you paint it, isn't it? Why the iron metal is painted? Because the surface is prevented or not exposed to the corrosive particles. Now this surface coating is of various types. The first type that we are going to see is the galvanization. Now I said that the surface coating is nothing but the coating. We are coating the metal with the other metal. Now this process, galvanization, is a process in which the coating on the iron sheets will be of zinc. So that, and this is done using the electric current. Now when the electric current is passed through it, a fine thin coating of the zinc gets deposited on the iron sheets, which this zinc prevents the iron getting rusted or corroded. So this process is called as galvanization. So the thin layer of the zinc get deposited on the iron sheets. That we are going to see is the electroplating in the sense coating one metal over the other, so that the metal which is present on the top prevents the inner metal from corrosion. It is also done by passing electricity, so it is called as electroplating. Next is called as anodizing. Now anodizing is nothing but the electrochemical process. Aluminiums are anodized. Aluminiums are widely used for anodizing. So the upper coating will have lustrous property, and it will be used for the decorative purpose. The next one is the cathodic protection. Now we said that these are the surface coating process, isn't it? So the one metal is coated over the other metal, so has to protect the inner metal. In cathodic protection, the metal present at the surface of the inner metal is easily corrodable, so that the inner metal is protected from corrosion, and the metal which is coated is called as the sacrificial metal. So with that, we have come to the end of this lesson, periodic classification of elements, children. Now in this lesson, the important part is the extraction of iron, copper and the aluminum. Now often these questions are asked in the question paper, especially in the 7 marks question. And now this question, that is the smelting process in the blast furnace, is mostly appears in many of the question papers. So see to that you are thorough with these questions. Now especially the smelting process in the blast furnace and the reactions that comes under this 3 regions, that is upper region, middle region and the lower region. Now see to that you write this whole smelting process in your classwork and try to read all the reactions. A balanced reaction should be written in the paper, in the answer sheet. So only the balanced reactions will be considered. So see to that you balance the reactions or memorize the reactions with balancing, so that you will score good marks. Now your homework for today is to learn this smelting process and write the smelting process in the classwork and submit the classwork in the school office on Friday, so that it will be corrected and given back to you as soon as possible. We'll see in the next session, children. Thank you.